In Ultrakill, there are many mechanics. There's slide hopping, slam storage, dead coining, and the almighty rail coins. However, there's one mechanic that I believe deserves a lot more attention. Parrying.
End it now!
Parrying is a mechanic that isn't praised nearly as much, and I don't see it used all too often other than memes. So, as the parry guy himself, I'm morally obligated to talk about parrying for the next few minutes. So, let's not waste any time and jump into what our funny blue robot can do by pressing X. So, where do we start with this funky little arm of ours? Well, conveniently, we can start at the start, level 01. Specifically, upon making it past the second arena room in the level, we are told about reflecting enemy projectiles back at the enemy. What else are we told about parrying? Well, other than in 1-2 where we're told that a blue flash indicates an unparryable attack, we are told, nothing. This means that the only information we have on parrying other than these two little snippets are from other players, such as myself, or from practice. But hey, practicing is too hard, am I right? So I'm just gonna tell you basically everything you need to know about parrying. First off, parrying will heal you all the way back to your max HP, not 100, just your max HP. However, hard damage can be regenerated faster by getting style points. Parrying happens to also be really stylish. So stylish, in fact, that if you parry in the cyber grind, you'll start hearing cheers. That's not all though, as parrying will also immediately regenerate you back to full stamina. This means that if you're on low HP and or low stamina, you can parry and get back into the fight. This is pretty risky though, since if you're at low HP and you miss, that's still not the only thing parrying will do. If you parry a projectile, it will become explosive, even if the original projectile wasn't explosive. This gives you a bit more forgiveness to hit parries, and the option to annihilate groups of enemies if done properly. This isn't really useful, but it's cool. That means something, right? However, projectiles aren't the only thing you can parry, and this is where things get weird. Not only can you parry projectiles, but you can also parry melee attacks. The majority of the time, this will cause the enemy to be staggered, allowing you to avoid taking damage and also heal. You can even do a combination of both and parry an enemy during the windup of their ranged attack. These windows are usually very short, but the window for parrying a melee attack extends beyond the point where you can take damage. This means that in rare cases, you can parry an enemy and take damage at the same time. This will cause you to take less damage and heal to max HP, but you will suffer some hard damage. This can be avoided by doing what I like to call a dash parry, which is pretty self-explanatory. You dash and then immediately parry. Since dashing gives you iframes, if you were going to get hit, you still don't, and get the full reward. This is also extremely useful against the enemies that don't get staggered when parrying them. The most notable ones being an enraged swords machine, and both prime souls. The timing can be a bit tricky, but once you get used to dashing just before you parry, it'll come naturally. And if done correctly, there's no downside since the stamina used for dashing is regenerated instantly. If you want to, you can also briefly slide to cancel your momentum, but it's not all too necessary since the speed from dashing is very short-lived. But we're not done talking about Swords Machine yet, since the shotgun can also parry, just very rarely. The way to land a shotgun parry is by being at very close range and shooting the enemy in the chest during the windup of their melee attack. This is really only useful against the Swords Machine themselves. parry can even be done with the overpump's explosion. I don't know why, but you can do it. However, if you thought dash parrying was complicated, you're in for a ride. And this one involves the concept that all gamers know and love: damage. So parry damage is really goddamn weird. Instead of doing a set amount of damage, a parry will do a percentage of the enemy's max health. Light enemies and fodder enemies such as strays usually die in one parry. This, of course, has some exceptions. For example, a radiant stray won't die in one parried projectile, but it will die if you parry it during the melee windup window. Thankfully, this gets less confusing with the heavier enemies and the bosses. This is where the damage is a lot more consistent. However, there are still some confusing nitbits, so let's go over those first. With swords machines, the first parry will deal less damage, but will stagger the swords machine. However, the next parries will deal more damage, but won't stun them. This means if you stand still and parry swords machine over and over, you will eventually die. To parry an enraged swords machine without taking damage, you need to dash parry. And also something I discovered while writing this script is that if you parry the sword throw, it for some reason doubles the stun duration. I don't know why, but okay. With mind flares, if you position your character just right, you'll be able to parry 2 projectiles at the same time. This clearly transitions into the most confusing thing about parrying. This is the Ultrakill. For some unknown reason, when parrying a melee attack, you can sometimes hit multiple times. This will cause the punch sound to play multiple times, which is kinda loud. I have no idea why it does this, or if it even does more damage, but it seems to happen mostly against Sisyphus Prime. If anyone knows what the fuck is going on here, please tell me in the comments down below. And I actually completely forgot to put this part in the script, but I feel like it deserves its own section. Parrying Minos Prime. Just dash parry. Yeah, that's it. For a more in-depth explanation as to why, if you don't dash parry, Minos' attack will still hit you. This does not apply if you just sidestep thy enemies now. And that's it. That is everything you need to know about parrying. All the jank, all the damage, and how to parry successfully. Hopefully you've learned a bit, and to end this video off, I'm going to show you this tier list. This will show you every enemy that you should and should not parry. I know this video wasn't super long because it's not that complicated, especially compared to some other abilities, but it definitely deserves a lot more time in the spotlight rather than just some funny memes. Hopefully I've done enough to explain my favorite mechanic in not just Ultrakill, but any game. Because trust me, if the ability to parry and do some stylish shit comes up, you know I'm gonna go for it.
Do you know what I've always felt gas stations don't have nearly enough of? Gas. Let it be known right now that I came prepared for this, and I gave you guys a fair warning. This is going to be loud, it's gonna be bright, it's gonna be considered a mistake by some, but certainly not by me.